Hello, folks. This is Joe from MIGeekScene. I am standing next to Comfort and Adam, and we're all at JAFAX 2016. How are you two doing today?
Oh, we are doing excellently today.
Fantastic.
We are actually outside. This is like one of my very few rare interviews outside because it's nice-ish outside. Hot. I take that back. Nonetheless, I'm not here to talk about the weather.
It's wonderful.
It is
Love it.
beautiful outside, but it's hot because I've got
Summer.
conditions.
It's not Arizona hot.
Yeah,
Yes,
no.
that's
It's
true.
Michigan hot.
It's Michigan hot. But we're here at JAFAX. How has the con been treating you so far?
been good so
Everything's
far.
awesome. I think a lot of people were in line today. I
Yes.
don't think everyone is expecting the amount of people to show up, but that's a very good thing.
Yeah. There's worse problems to have than too many people want to be here.
Yes. Well, for those who don't know, Comfort and Adam are the co-creator team behind quite a few comics, Rainbow in the Dark, The Uniques, and I have to read off of this, The Complete Guide to Self-Publishing Comics.
It's a
That's
long title. Yes, Random House chose that title.
But before we really get into all your titles and whatnot,
Yes.
what were your first exposure to comics?
Oh my goodness. I read X-Men comic back in the day, but it was because I was looking for X-Men because I love the X-Men cartoon and I hearted it very much.
Oh, that show was awesome.
It was awesome. It was my jam for so many years, so I felt I had to start reading comics.
Still one of the best theme songs in the
That's
history
right.
of cartoons.
I wholeheartedly agree, actually.
I had a ratty old issue of Daredevil shoved into my hands when I was a very little kid on a family boat trip so that I would have something to occupy myself with. So I reread that one issue of Daredevil over and over and over again.
Do you know who the artist was? Was it a
I-
Frank Miller run?
It had no cover.
Okay,
It was
fair
that
enough.
old, that
That's
ratty.
how old it was. It was not Frank Miller because I have since read all the Frank Miller Daredevil. I became quite a Daredevil fan. But no, that one issue I have never found again. I think it had Turbo in it.
Okay.
That's all that I recall. And it ended with some shadowy figure sitting behind a desk speaking menacingly about
What
next
60-year-old
issue.
Adam on a
Yeah.
boating trip remembers.
Was it Dr. Claw?
A whole other universe, Joe.
Oh my goodness, no such thing as crossovers in
Right.
comics ever.
No.
Right, rude.
Well, you two have a very unique style,
That's right.
and it's, very distinct. I've noticed that in your artwork, you have very prominent nose and full lips, prominent noses and full lips. And that's certainly not a critique, it's just something that I've noticed.
Sure.
Sure.
Why that approach?
Oh, in the style? Well, everybody has to look like their own individual characters and stuff like that. And
That's right.
we like doing all different characters of all sorts of different races and stuff. And to some degree, you're going to draw yourself just a little bit. And so prominent noses and full lips.
They do come up. I think that because we're so into drawing characters as individuals and trying to present each of them as unique personalities, the more you can play with the different features of the face, the more room you have to create different looking characters. And the nose and mouths are essential pieces of that puzzle.
Okay. One of the books I mentioned earlier was Rainbow in the Dark. Could we talk about what
Sure,
Rainbow in the
of
Dark's
Of course
about?
we can.
Yes, plugging time.
Yay!
We know a little bit about that book.
Yeah, so I mean, for anybody who doesn't know, Rainbow in the Dark is sort of like a punk rock urban fairy tale about a world of color and a world of black and white that are at constant war over what gets to be reality.
Except the people in the gray world don't know that any of that is happening. They're completely oblivious to this all around them all the time. So it's a story kind of about the nature of reality, about how we define it for ourselves, and how the choices that we make can have a literal power to change what the world is.
I would agree. At first, I got a little bit of a Matrix vibe when I was reading the comic.
Certainly,
Yeah.
Matrix by way of Pleasantville, yeah.
Yep.
Yes, that's another good point, actually. I didn't even think about Pleasantville.
Yeah, well, it's sort of like the Hollywood pitch is it's Rainbow Bright meets Mad Max in a world that is Pleasantville by way of the Matrix.
So there you go.
Was the title based on Ronnie James Dio?
Well, it came from actually a number of places. We were just tossing that title around as a goof while we were still coming up with the initial concept, partly because we had this rock opera thing in mind. The characters speak in song quotes throughout the book. We worked the lyrics into the dialogue because we wanted to create a subliminal soundtrack. When I hear somebody talking, they say something that reminds me of a line from a song. I've got that song in my head all day.
I'm the same
All
way.
day. Yeah,
Yep.
so we wanted to see if we could have you hearing music while you read a book and give you that genuine musical experience. It just sort of stuck.
Yep.
We had not necessarily intended to keep that as the title as we went, but we never found anything that encapsulated the overall feeling, including that rock opera aspect, as well as Rainbow in the Dark.
Okay. And I noticed that a lot of the main characters were all based on different musical genres.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Were there any particular bands or artists that inspired the different musical genre characters?
I think more so like it was just looking at what genres we could use. I'd say one character in particular is sort of like Jimi Hendrix if he was a Jedi
Yes,
Knight.
I was like, that's Jimi Hendrix.
Yep.
But he's also a little bit Prince, and he's a little bit all over the place. It's sort of the bohemian psychedelic rock kind of a feeling. Initially we had an idea of what kind of characters these people were, and we had to ask what genre of music would best encapsulate that sort of a feeling, that sort of personality, the vibe that we wanted these people to have. Initially, we even just named them after their genres. They were just going to be called, rockabilly and new wave, but that didn't stick. It's too,
we just named. Eventually, they all earned their own unique names.
Was Jackson based on Sam Elliott?
If you can put Sam Elliott into a film or television project or book of any sort, I think that it is incumbent upon you to do so.
And from what I gathered, Raina was based on your sister, Amy.
In part. Certainly her style was a lot from my sister. She had more style than anybody I think I ever knew, and the character had a lot of her spirit.
Punky, rock and roll, awesome.
The radical individuality that my sister really had.
I mean, I noticed in the background some extra characters, like little references, like Spike Spiegel was sitting on a table with a guitar.
Yep.
Yeah. Sure.
So,
we get bored, and so sometimes we have to draw in other things, and so it's like little Easter eggs. So there's sometimes other characters from other things, just in the background. Then there's sometimes too other comic creators and stuff like that in the background.
Family members, friends. You got to do whatever you can to make it more interesting to draw the crowd shots.
all right. We're going to talk about I would like to talk about your other books, the Complete Guide to Self-Publishing Comics, which you obviously didn't choose the name for.
We didn't. I mean, it was one of those things where, we wanted to make a book, and that's what it is about, making comics, manga, and web comics. And, Random House was like, what? Self-publishing's really hot, so we're going to name it that.
We were nervous initially about putting self-publishing in the title, because I think a lot of people are scared of the idea of self-publishing. Most people who self-publish now didn't necessarily set out to do that. They just wound up doing it. And we ourselves were not excited about the idea of being self-publishers in the beginning. So we thought, let's make a book that sort of gets you into that mode in more of a stealth way. Bring people in just because they want to make comics, and over the course of the book, give them a good feeling that they can break out and do it on their own. But Random House was really determined to make it
determined.
to label it as self-publishing. So our thought was, if a big publisher wants to help advertise to people that they're no longer necessary, then I'm happy to let them do that.
Excellent. Well, and you also have, I don't know if the upcoming book's out yet, but the Kitty Games?
Oh,
the Kitty Game.
Kitty Game is coming hopefully soon.
Kitty
It's
Game's
really
my fault.
incumbent on us to finish the website that we're making that will host it, because all of our comics, the Uniques, Rainbow in the Dark, all that will be web comics coming up soon.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Speaking of which, I guess fellow friends of mine, who are the ones that are going to be working on it?
Corinne Roberts,
Yep.
who is fabulous. She's going to be doing the drawing artwork for it, and she's also
the
doing
watercolor. Yeah, the idea of Kitty Game is we wanted to get into what is going on in your cat's head when they're attacking nothing for no reason. When they pounce the couch and you can't figure out why. What does the cat think they're doing?
What is the fantasy in their head? And so
Right.
it's sort of playing with reality and fantasy, sort of going through a day in the life of this cat and its owner.
And all the fantasy scenes will be full watercolor, also produced by Corinne Roberts. We have Will Jones.
Oh.
Yes. Will Jones is doing color along with Travis Perkins. So this will be our first time writing a book that we are not doing the art for
Which
ourselves.
is amazing.
It's been a really good experience for us.
I was like, is that a little bit more, is it more of a relief that you're just actually just doing the writing instead of having to do everything else?
Oh, sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just a lot of work to do all of it. So,
Yeah.
and we frankly don't have time. So what we learned from doing Rainbow and having to take a break from Uniques is that we didn't want to take any more breaks from Uniques, but we
Right.
did want to make more stories.
Yeah.
So in order to do that, we needed other artists and stuff
Sure.
to help us make these stories.
Now, normally when I'm talking to people about their books, I try to go in a chronological order. Yes, we mentioned the Uniques, which was your first book, but however, you are now doing a director's cut of
Yes.
that.
So
Now-
it feels like the second book to most people.
It's both our first book and our newest book at
Yes.
the same time.
So what is the Uniques about, and why did you decide to take the director's cut approach? I already know the answer to that.
Right, right.
Sure.
Well, it's sort of like Teen Titans if it was an HBO series.
Yeah, it's a book about teenage heroes in a world where people with powers are a normal and accepted part of society. But we wanted to do a superhero book about growth and change, where things are not going to be the same forever. They start in their teenage years, and over the course of the series, we'll be taking them up into their 50s, and we'll see the entire breadth of their lives, their careers, see how they change the world and how the world changes them.
All right, and well, I noticed you came up with numerous names for the heroes and villains.
Yeah.
Has that become I mean, since pretty much everything's been said and done as far as naming characters, like with like superhero handles, was that a difficult process coming up with new, and no pun intended, unique names? I promise, no pun intended.
that's
Well,
fine.
you know, there is a kind of a secret to naming superheroes is like you cannot copyright words that are just words. So like
Sure.
Batman can be copywritten, but Bat cannot. So all the
Sure.
characters in Uniques are actually simply named because we didn't want to run into anybody else ever being like, oh, but my character was named that at one
There
point.
have been so
Yeah.
many superheroes with so many different names that Lord knows it's almost like writing a song. Every chord progression has already been used at some point. All the good names have been used. So rather than worrying about scouring copyright pages, we just went with things that were simpler and things that were more direct, straightforward. Don't worry about the name. Focus on the character.
Right. And the name itself will reflect the character. So
Right.
each one of those are carefully chosen, but again, chosen simply in part because that's memorable and because we can't get in trouble for it.
Yeah.
Well, I would actually say, as I was reading the book, I would say that issue 3 was my favorite. I definitely enjoy the cover, the homage to the Justice League International.
Yep.
And I love the fact that you threw in references to bad dudes.
Yeah. Deep cuts.
I was like, I mean, when they threw in like President Captured by Ninjas, I was like, that's bad dudes.
Yep.
Straight up.
Exactly.
Straight up.
So
Fight the red ninjas.
You know,
Save the
the
president.
thing is the stories themselves are about growth and change. Like that's the theme. And so in order to do that, we start the comic in the 90s. And so every single issue, you're going, you know, a couple of hours, days, weeks, months, years forward in time. And so because we're starting in the 90s and we're paying attention to what happened culturally, those references make sense. You know,
Yeah.
we're trying to make it feel authentic.
Yeah.
So I take it the Uniques will be the focus of your attention from this point on.
Yeah, the idea
Yep.
is that while we have other stories that we are going to be writing, other miniseries we're excited to get to, we're never going to have to stop Uniques along the way.
Right.
It's going to be a 100-issue series. It's going to be very long,
No
very deep.
No
Yeah.
kidding. That snaps.
Very deep.
yes.
We've got a
Snaps
lot
the
of ground to
goals.
cover. It's a very big story we want to tell, and we want to do it right. And the only way to do it right is to just see it through.
I'm interested in checking that out when it's. I own Volume 1 of the Director's Cut.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because a while ago I was all ready to buy the $45 thick
Yeah,
omnibus,
exactly.
and then you were like,
The
"Yep,
original
we're all out of that."
Yeah.
Yep, it's gone
Sold out,
for
sold
good.
through.
All right, as we're wrapping this up, what would you like
Yeah.
to say to your fans?
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
coming. Yeah, thanks for being awesome, you guys. You
Yeah.
make all this worth it. Like, we could just tell each other stories all the time, and that's nice.
And
but
we do.
really, and we do. But really, being able to have you guys to share the stories with us, that's what makes this all worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, we do these so that we can share them.
All right, and if people wanted to find out more about you or your work online, where can they go?
They can go to comfortandadam.com.
All right. Well, Comfort and Adam, thank you once again for this interview.
Absolutely.
Folks, this is Joe from MIGeekScene at JAFAX 2016 with Comfort and Adam. Take it easy.